Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you've seen my other YouTube video on coffee chats, you're gonna love this one. In it, we go even deeper into networking, getting more specific about the reasons why networking exists, why it's important for investment banking or high finance recruitment, what to aim for in one, when to do them, how to set them up, and what to do after each of them as well. What I think is really special about this video is the live coffee chat recordings that we review from real students with real professionals. And if you want to hear what your competition is saying and learn how to beat them, watch the video. We first start with the different levels of coffee chatting competency and explain the characteristics of each of the three levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, or offer ready, as I like to call it. This will help clarify for you how good you are at coffee chatting and how to level up. We then go into the philosophy behind coffee chats, why they exist, why it's particularly important for investment banking recruitment. And this is a very important part of the presentation. And if you don't have the time to watch it in full, at least watch this part. Here I dive into the specifics of what to aim for in a coffee chat, how you're being evaluated by the professional, how to approach each of the three stages of a coffee chat, and how to convert one into a referral. Truly, this is something I haven't seen anywhere else online and highly recommend that you watch it. We then go into the coffee chat recordings, listening to and analyzing each of them. And I made sure to pick both good and bad chats so you have a clear and realistic depiction of the do's and do nots of coffee chatting that I cover in the presentation as well. Now, timestamps are down below for those who want to listen to select portions of the chat. And for context, the video is a recording of a webinar that I held during the summer of this year, 2024, and it's why I referred to this summer throughout the presentation. Anyways, I'll get out of your way now. Enjoy the video and happy recruiting. Okay, well, thank you all for joining me on this Saturday to learn about coffee chats. Appreciate you all taking time out of your summers. And to respect your time and appreciation of you guys coming today. As you know, in every webinar that I do, there are certain things that I give away at the end for those who stay. And certainly many of them pertain to what we'll cover today, which is networking and coffee chats and what to do this summer to ultimately convert the coffee chats that you'll be doing into first round interviews to hopefully land one before its end. So with that in mind, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Matthew, and currently I've dropped out of UBC, but for the last 4 years, essentially, spent all my time recruiting. And although these internships are great, I think what LinkedIn profiles often miss out on is just the journey, right? The process instead of the outcome. And having overcome many barriers in first year, not knowing anything about networking, not even networking at all, to starting that summer, to then eventually spending all of second year networking, realizing what I was doing wrong to land my summer internship at the end of it, and ultimately going to the US. And then now, and turning back to help many students do the same. So that's a little bit of evidence as to why you should listen to me today, but we'll get into it. So I think the meat of this presentation really comes down to the recordings that we're going to review and to put pen to paper on many of the frameworks that I've talked about on LinkedIn or the stuff that you guys maybe have seen online. But I think what the stuff online often misses out on is why you're networking. Like, what is all this for? How did it even come to be? Like, what am I aiming for in a chat? Like, everyone always says a referral. But the fact is, a referral is inobservable until the time that you realize either you got it or you didn't. And anyone who says otherwise in your networking process, oh yeah, I'll send your resume to HR, you cannot bank on that until you get the first round interview. Because I'm sure that there's a group of you who have gotten those sure things, oh, this interview is a shoo-in, and it doesn't come to fruition, right? And so if you guys would like, I can walk you through the sort of internal process of how referrals work and how employees actually arrive at the group of first-round candidates they select. But as we look ahead in the summer, I think something that's helpful with coffee chats is these stages that you may get to and that lies ahead and the ones that maybe you've surpassed already. Because, and one of the problems that I found with coffee chatting was I had no idea like where I stood. And this makes sense in sort of the context of recruitment because you have limited time, but unlimited things to do. Right? The problem with recruitment isn't doing the work. It's what work you should be doing. And so if you're coffee chatting, right, if you don't know where you stand on networking, essentially your recruitment strategy, which is allocating a limited resource to unlimited options, right, will be flawed. So let's look at the different competency levels for coffee chats. So let's take Bob. Bob in his first year, he does a couple coffee chats, lands his first internship. That's great, better than me. Right? I didn't do any networking at all. Then more coffee chats, and gets a second internship. And why this is on screen, is whether or not it's after your second or before your third or whatever. The fact is, you're going to get to a point when you're networking where there's no longer you don't observe learning effects. Your first 0 to 10 coffee chats, it's whole whirlwind of learning experiences. But at this point, it's just you're just plateauing, and it's like nothing seems to be working with networking. So know that one, the increasing marginal returns lies just ahead, right? You're at an inflection point, and another one's coming. Second is that if networking isn't working for you right now, understand that if you just do more coffee chats, you can get to the point where you are converting these chats into referrals consistently. Now, I will say that criteria extends beyond just that chat itself. It's your resume too, the experiences and all that. But hopefully this helps as you guys go ahead with networking in the summer, should you maybe not get the results that you want, right? To know that okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So let's understand what levels, what actually comprises each level here. So level 1 is characterized by not being able to get to the 20-minute mark consistently, and that you're still worried about having enough questions to ask, about just extending the conversation. And really, because these are your first 0 to 15 chats, when you get into it, you're kind of more focused on just being in the chat, on saying something, on not having awkward silences, right? So you're still learning the rules of the game. Level 2, you can't necessarily have a conversation consistently, but you are always getting to the 20-minute mark, right? The preparation or the feelings that you have before a chat are still mostly anxiety, and your preparation probably lasts between 5 to 15 minutes. But the main thing is that you're not having a conversation consistently yet, right? And that really comes down to how you respond and just your comfort in this sort of you talking to a stranger situation. Level 3 is where you can walk into any chat with no prep at all, but have a conversation. They think that you prep for it, right? You have no anxiety walking into it. Prepping itself is a skill. And so as you prep more and more, understand that you will get more efficient at it. So not all your chats will be 30 minutes of prep. Some of them will. Level 3 really is kind of the stage that you want to get to land those IB offers. The ones where you hop on a call when you're penultimate summer recruiting, and the other person immediately starts evaluating you. And one of the chats that we'll review today is one of those calls where one of my students hopped on, RVC associate, and immediately started asking interview questions. So you guys will encounter those chats throughout the summer. And so I think it's helpful to listen to it. But back to this, right? Those numbers are approximate. And you guys, when we'll dive deeper into the student colleague continuum later, but really what to aim for is always the colleague. Colleague is what characterizes level 3. All the things that I said, you can wrap it up in colleague. And so where most of you are, right, whether you're right above it, on the top right or bottom left, there's still a long way ahead of you. Now, when I was in first year and when I first started networking, I think one of the things that I that I was very frustrated with, or that I was almost embarrassed by, was the fact that other students seemed to be, just getting better results. That summer when I was networking, one of my friends actually landed his second year summer internship in July of his first year summer, right? And he was one of those dudes that I was mocking with, and I was like, oh my gosh, how is he already ahead? He already landed second year summer, dude. He's gonna have a 4-month lead on me, get to the US and all that stuff. Long story short, he ended up not going to the US, although that was his goal, right? I did. And that's not to toot my horn or anything, but to show you that starting points do not matter, because the road that lies ahead is super long, right? And I think another frame that's helpful is think about all the skills in recruitment, right? You have your interviewing, and that itself, right? There's many skills within that. Just how you speak, right? Your presence in an interview, the rapport that you can build on a short-term basis. The point is, many of these different fronts on which that we need to play the recruitment game are new skills, i.e., you're still at the point of increasing marginal returns. Meaning that you will that every extra hour you spend, you get more for the time that you invest. So if you just spend 3 hours more than your friends, right, and they spend 1 hour, right, you're not just getting 4 times the benefit, 4 versus 1. It's almost like 10 times. So starting points don't matter about that. And another thing to think about is, well, how many of your friends have sales experience? Did they work in customer service? Are they in a club where they have indirect experience through talking to mentors? Like students in my program, they learn from my experiences. They don't need to do 100 coffee chats, maybe they do 20. So don't worry about all that stuff. Just start doing your chats and figure out what level you're currently at. Now, the next obvious question would be how to go from level 1 to 3, right? And what are the criteria to focus on, Matthew, when I'm trying to get to level 3, right? Now, one of the things would be just like generally in recruitment, this is what you're kind of told, right? And the important thing is back to the what's online, the networking part of things. The extent of it is you coffee chat a lot and you get a referral. Send emails too, right? But let's actually make this helpful. So these are the things that networking coffee chats would comprise, right? The different factors within it that are important to focus on. And really all of these can be boiled down to be audibly better than other people. You introduce yourself better. You have better vocabulary that connotes a higher level of familiarity with the capital markets, finance, corporate finance. Right? You transition better, you're smoother, you bring a better presence to the interview, you're more confident, you sequence your questions better. It's like, okay, awesome. Okay, well, like, what does better actually mean? So let's go back to the colleague-student continuum, right? And understand from first principles how coffee chats came to be, the frames to use to look at your coffee chats through. And this is helpful because this is the only way that you're going to understand what different levers that you need to pull to get to that referral threshold. So first, why networking even exists? I think this is a question that either you won't ask, or you ask about a second and you realize there's like no good answer online. I guess I asked my career center, like they couldn't give me a good answer. Just build your network. Great. So I networked to build my network. It's like, okay, thanks for answering my question with the word I asked you to define. So the reason why networking exists is really just comes down to efficiency. As in, the number of candidates that a firm can interview is finite, right? And let's fix that. So let's say it's 20, and the number of applicants is infinite. It could be 1, it could be 2,000. But the point is, if you can only take 20 people for the first round interview, and you scale up the number of applicants that you have, at some point, can you still be confident that on their resume alone, or their application package alone, that the 20 you select are truly the 20 best candidates? Right? Because in the 20,000 case, which is like Goldman Sachs, right, that means you are 100% certain that 19,980 people are not investment bank material on their application package alone. So that's why networking exists. And in fact, it's not even specific to finance capital market. You see it in Big Four too. They love their networking events, right? But I think one of the things that students lament all the time is like the fact that, oh, dude, investment banking, I have the network, coffee chat. It's like, well, dude, there's always preliminary evaluations for anything that's competitive. It's simply just resources and scarcity. So second, what coffee chats actually are for? It's like, okay, I need to network because they want to identify the best candidates. Like, cool. So when I get into a coffee chat, like, what is this actually for? Like, what is being evaluated? And it's the same thing as an interview. If you think about it, an interview is just solving for the candidate that's most likely to be the best investment banking analyst, right? Now, the reference point for best investment banking analyst would just be a firm's current investment banking analyst. Meaning that really, going back to the colleague frame, like all you're trying to prove coffee chat is that you are the highest confidence candidate in terms of your ability to be the best investment banking analyst. And it comes down to 2 things, right? Your competence, your preparedness, how good you are at the job, and how much people like working with you. So the questions that you see on screen are the questions that are running through the person's mind when you're coffee chatting them. So lastly, why coffee chats in specific? Like, what's so special about them? Like, you look back at all the other roles, right? Software engineering, they don't have coffee chats. Quant doesn't have coffee chats. Consulting, to some extent, they have a case interview though. Product manager interviews are like rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds. Why coffee chats for investment banking? 2 things: 1, authenticity, and 2, role. So in a coffee chat, right, it's very visceral. You're in it when you're in one. and you tunnel vision on that thing. And because of that, unlike a resume where you've had months, days, weeks, hours to prepare it, and that's essentially why you're formatting if there's any errors, like it's an instant ding. Second, in an interview, you can be confident exactly what kinds of questions are asked, the core three, right? Teams always asked, and you've had so much time to prepare. So, but in a coffee chat, okay, yeah, I kind of know how it goes. You guys are attending this workshop, right? I'm telling you that. But really, when it comes down to it, you have no idea what will go on past the teammate exchange on a coffee chat, right? Exchange introductions. When the conversation starts, it's unlike any other, right? Every single chat's unique. And so because of those factors, it strips you of the ability to come to that call with like these premeditated deceptions. And therefore, what you present on that call is the rawest version of you. And they know that too. And it's why coffee chats are held in the highest regard in those first-time candidates. Second would be the role itself. So remember, those other roles don't have coffee chatting. So why IB, right? And the fact is that as an investment banking analyst, communication underlies everything that you do, right? You are an extension of brands, of the firm's brand. And because of that, because you're on the front lines, interacting with management teams, interacting with the general public, interacting with the press, interacting with clients, prospective and existing, it's like they want to make sure that at a minimum, you maintain the brand's image, right? We definitely don't want you to detract from it. If you improve it, great, but we want you to at least maintain. And that's why coffee chats in particular are used, because they emulate the skills required to be a good investment banking analyst or be a good private equity associate. Quant software engineering, like I don't think there's a lot of like, talking to management teams going on. I know you guys don't either. So I know this is helpful in terms of framing your coffee chat, but let's put pen to paper and going back to the student colleague frame, right? Top talent, right? Remember, why networking is just to find the top talent most efficiently and in the highest confidence way. Who do you think they sound more like, a student or a colleague? A colleague, right? Okay. So who do you think would pass these interviews? A colleague, right? Who do you think would be better in an impromptu conversation? A colleague. More confident in the job? A colleague. So maybe you guys are tired of me saying colleague, but really, one of the biggest questions I get about coffee chatting before we go into these audio recordings is, should I ask for a referral? Like, what do I say? All that stuff, right? And I think this goes back to the perceived inauthenticity of coffee chats. As in, dude, if I don't ask, right, like, am I like deceiving them? Like, this seems so fake chat. Like, I don't want to like be so transactional. And it's like, dude, it's not transactional, and you're not being deceptive because the other person knows why you reached out. Like, they played the game. They're an investment banking analyst. They know how this works. Like, they played the game so well that it's their success at it. It's why you're reaching out. If they didn't play the game properly, they wouldn't be an IB analyst. You wouldn't be reaching out. So they know. So you don't need to ask, because a referral, right? You can imagine it like an employee paying you respect, right? When you guys come on, if I were to spend 15 minutes just talking about my program, trying to sell myself, asking you guys to pay me money, right? Most of you will be turned away. If you guys were neutral before you came on, you'd be like, dude, Matthew's like, dude, he's such a sellout, right? And it's the same thing in the coffee chats. It's like, because if you guys buy from me, it is you guys paying me respect, saying, hey, Matthew, I believe you can help me. Similarly, in a coffee chat, if an employee, right, or a referral gives you a referral, they're saying to you, hey, dude, I think you're the best. Or dude, I believe in you, right? And for many of you out there who know and like have been in hierarchies before, right? Respect is earned, not given. So to me, as soon as I ask, you guys are turned away, right? But if I earn that respect and never try to extract it, right, then you guys are more willing to come to me and be like, hey, Matthew, right? Similarly, if you were to ask in a coffee chat for the referral, at that point, like one that has basically no bearing on whether you get it, and it would only be a negative effect. So the only two things that you need to understand that you need to do to get a referral is, first, and the hardest part, the 90% of it, proving that you're top talent, proving that you're a colleague, or proving that you have the highest probability to be a colleague amongst the other students. Second, express interest. Because if you ask, similar to respect, no one gives it to you. You earn it, And then someone's like, hey, you should go. So remember, a referral is respect, and respect is earned, not given. So if you ask for the referral, you're hurting your chances. And the fact is, it should be so obvious that your referral material, you don't even need to ask. Okay? So don't ask for referrals. Process of wrap up. The second thing that students often, I think, forget is that your coffee chats are independent events. If you did 3 coffee chats and coffee chat 3 was shittier than coffee chat 1, most students would be disappointed in themselves, be demotivated. This thing isn't working, right? And but remember, the variable that changed across the 3 was the other person. So don't compare your chats to other chats that you've done as a means of understanding how good you are, or like building conviction in yourself, right? And unfortunately, it's hard to compare chats to other students, but the fact is like, that's all it is. So the coffee chat 3, if the dude was dry, right? Remember, he's probably dry to every single student out there. So going back to the very start, right? Process of outcome for coffee chats. Just come to every chat trying to make this the best chat ever. Because paying attention to anything else, right, is only going to cause more like stress than it will be helpful. Now, hopefully that clarifies kind of why that was on screen and why these are the things to focus on when it comes to coffee chatting. But we'll explore them and sort of apply them to actual coffee chats and see them in action very shortly. But I think the next 2 questions that probably come to mind are, so what does that actually sound like? And then how do you get there? So I think this is a helpful graphic to understand just the sort of process of coffee chatting with a singular employee. It's you have pre-chat stuff that you get down, you reach out, have the chat, and then you do the stuff after the chat. Now, in terms of what to do pre-coffee chat and what to have down, I would have your resume, your personal behavioral answers, your outreach message, all that makes sense, right? Your resume, self-explanatory. Core 3, just because your teammate will always be asked, and the other 2, if you are being evaluated, will arise in the call. That makes sense, but that's like, guys, if you don't understand a role fully, like you're not going to be able to get a referral to it, because it's audible your understanding of that role or of that industry. So like if you can't use the right ways, like right terms to describe a role, or when you're in that coffee chat, like you're not going to get it because you just don't remind them of someone who deserves to be at their firm. Second, I think after that would be a personalized question list, and I'll show you guys kind of my setup pre-coffee chat very shortly. But yeah, 15 to 30 minutes of developing these questions, and realize that you're not going to use 90% of them. They're just there because you're doing your due diligence. If it comes up, if you seize the opportunity, right, or if the opportunity arises, you want to seize it. You want to be able to, right? Because if you think about it, if most students don't personalize questions, right, and don't spend as much time prepping as you do, then when you have the chance to show that you prepped, you'll stand out. So any background, any notable stuff on the firm will be helpful, like their profile, all that stuff. This was my setup before every chat. So like you can see the Warren Buffett one. That's kind of like my note taker, right? This is a chat that already happened. On the right, you see my questions. That was like the personalized question list for every chat. I had various teammate like variations on my screen because I always wanted a script. Had different transitions for the end, for after my teammate, and then a couple of news articles on the left. Sorry, excuse me. A couple news articles on the left, just in case it ever came up. This was kind of where I put all the notes for my coffee chats, right? And this is helpful because I can go back to them and see like any commonalities across. And of course, when I get to the actual first round interview, I have all the notes that I need to craft the firm-specific behaviorals. I would have this on my screen, so my resume and then my LinkedIn profile, or their LinkedIn profile, sorry. My resume was because if they did ask resume-specific questions, should it be an evaluative coffee chat? I would have instant understanding of what they were referring to my resume and know exactly what to say, right? Because if there's an awkward pause, then it implies that you're like trying to find something and like you're opening your resume and maybe finding some prep material. So it's better you can just answer it instantly, just have it on screen. Their LinkedIn was just like, in case anything came up in the conversation that would relate to it. And so I could build on that and build more rapport that way. Second would be behavioral technical answers. Now, these rarely were ever used. But in the case that I was being evaluated, these are super helpful. Only one chat ever was asked me technical questions, UBS analyst for like my 3rd-year summer. And then there were 2 chats across like probably the 100 I did for ultimate summer recruiting where they asked about the deals in my resume. The when of networking is something that I can come back to later, just so that, and if you guys want, just like drop the question in the chat, because we'll have 15 minutes at the end. But I do want to get to the audio recordings. So any questions about this, just save them to the end. The who, I can explain the exact sort of differences between reaching out, who you should start with, why past and coming interns are on there, talking to HR versus talking to employees, how is that different? And then the where, obviously, like I think I've said this multiple times, always email, grab information through LinkedIn. Zoom or phone call doesn't really matter, but remember at the end of the day, like Zoom is not always better. Sometimes the other person also doesn't want to be on camera. So like the thinking goes that like, oh, face to face, you build more rapport, and it's like, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like, sure, but like if you can't prove that you can do the job well and aren't competent, your resume isn't up to scratch, then like you're not getting the referral anyways. So focus more on proving that you're top talent, right? Proving that you can do the job, because I think for a lot of us, the personality piece is something that can come in naturally, and the main problem to solve is like, how do I sound like I deserve to be an investment banker? So we'll focus on the chat now, but just to walk you guys through the general process, a given coffee chat. So you hop on, you'll do small talk for a bit. I recommend preparing your small talk just so you always have stuff to say. Exchange teammates, right? You should always take control at that point and grab the conversation. The scripts are in the first coffee chat guide and in the bonus stuff that I'll add you to. So I'd say most transitions should be scripted, because like these always happen in chats. But essentially, if you are being evaluated, you will be asked resume questions in your core 3, but you should be taking notes at the time that they start their teammate, because that serves as material to augment your personalized question list. Now, the conversation happens essentially as soon as they end their teammate and you ask that first question. And the stuff to remember here is, your personalized questions, keep taking notes, but vocabulary is very important. The transitions are important and should be scripted. And then how you respond. So vocabulary and how you respond are the 2 main things that the students often mess up on. The types of questions would be rapport building or interview answer ammunition. Like, I think you can imagine these 2 buckets as fairly sort of liberal in terms of how you would define them. Like, I think you could find more buckets, but this is just helpful to understand that there's times where you must follow up on an answer they gave, and times where you have to transition to a new question just to move the conversation forward. Now, at the closing of the conversation, which typically occurs at the 20-minute mark, give your transition, right? And this is where you need to extract information pertaining to the recruitment cycle, any advice that you might want, names of other people, right? The referral is like hinted at here, but again, like the whether or not you actually get it is inobservable in a coffee chat, as well as after, until the first round interview invites are sent out. And I do recommend preparing the questions you want to ask here, because again, you always want to come off as polished as possible. That's most similar to a colleague. So I think I already talked about this, but yeah, vocabulary and responses. So if we go back to the parent personality frame, like your vocabulary conveys if you can do the job, how familiar you are with capital markets, corporate finance, and then how you respond, right, is determines the rapport that you build, right? So if you think about it like in a conversation with your friend, what you say, right, will determine how they perceive your intelligence, and then how you say it and how you listen to them and how you respond to what they're saying, right, will determine how much they enjoy this conversation. So because the responses are something that we'll go into when we listen to the coffee chats, here's like an example of vocabulary. Now, obviously, it goes beyond that and also comes down to not just the jargon that you use, but how you just communicate generally, the conciseness of your spoken ability. So understand that it has far-reaching implications. But because the referral goal is inobservable, I think something else to keep in mind as you go through a coffee chat would be that just because you can't get a referral doesn't mean that this chat is useless. As in, there could be reasons inobservable to you why they can't give you a referral, right? And so you still want to ensure that you bring your best to that chat, because they're going to divulge more information to you the more they respect you, the more they think that you're going to get into the interview process, right? So it's always important to bring your best every chat. And truly, the reason why coffee chats are so uncertain and why they're like, very anxiety-inducing is because of the uncertainty around them. And that uncertainty stems from the personality, like building the rapport, right? Because if that didn't exist, then you could just like talk about technicals the whole time, just like talk about deals, right? They would just interview you, right, on that coffee chat. So I say this just to know, just to like reiterate that you do have to remember these two things. And so as you maybe start focusing on showing your preparedness, right, your personality might deteriorate. And so just keep going back between these things and keep like self-assessing, going back to the levels and those frames and understand, okay, how am I doing? A good tip I'd say is record your coffee chats and listen to the back. Just so you know, in Canada, like only one party in a two-party like situation needs to consent to the recording of a coffee chat of like a conversation. So you guys are fine to record and just like review it in your time or share with your friends. But yeah, just some helpful tips there. So we'll get into the actual chats now. I'll be playing them on like 1.5 to 2 times speed, and we'll be annotating them or like commenting on them throughout it. But just to give you context for this, so this was a talk with a Barclays associate, Barclays Toronto, and so this student ended up actually going to an EB for the US for SA25. He landed an offer there. But I would say the intro was good. The bad part was the teammate was a bit too long and he didn't catch the conversation. Anyway, you guys be the judge. Hi,
Jaden. I'm doing good. How are you today? I assume it's been a busy week.
Yeah, no, it's a busy weekend, busy week. So yeah, no, I just got a chance to kind of respond to your message. I think I mean mine. I was midterm season. I know probably had a bunch of core reading grades.
Yeah, I probably had one of the worst. This might have been my worst midterm season I've ever had. I had 4 packed into 2 days right before, including 3 math courses. So it was a bit hell, but now reading break's kind of nice. So
good to hear. For sure. I mean, reading break is I'll look forward to that. Because your most midterms are done. So but you can actually go travel. Really need to kind of worry about much, except sometimes you have that one teacher that wants to rate at the started coming back.
So they're from the same school, which is why like this small talk seems a bit more like intimate than usual. But
no, I'm pretty lucky this year. I mean, the upside of having all those midterms right before is I got nothing after, at least for the next couple of weeks, other than the odd project here and there. So I'm the hopefully smooth sailing from the school perspective for a little while until finals around. Yeah, so it's definitely nice to just get some time to like get up, do some skiing. I honestly just sleep in for once, but
I don't know about you guys, but it definitely feels like he's going on a bit too long here with the small talk.
Quite good. However, in terms of your time at Barclays, how's it been relative? I guess I don't know exactly when you started, but with kind of like the bear market we've seen, and I've heard I think Sean mentioned that things have kind of picked up since the start of the year. I'm wondering like how that's been for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for my sake, your sake, why don't I go through that?
So that's what I mean by catching the conversation, right? In terms of extending the call talk too long, because like they want to get to the meat of the call, right? Like they don't just want to like talk to you for like 20 minutes, because again, like there is a benefit to them for taking this, right? Not only do they add to the network, because like in 5 years you guys will be essentially similar levels, but like you're still finding the best candidates, right? And this associate works for the firm. So like the reason why he wasn't able to catch the conversation, the student in this case, is because like the small talk and his response in that situation was a bit too long. Now, I think the trade-off between like being able to connote that familiarity and build that credibility by mentioning the bear M&A market, mentioning all that stuff is fine, because like he couldn't be confident of fitting it in later in the chat. And so I would have made that trade too. And he did get a referral from this, but we'll continue with it.
You think, just so I know kind of where you're coming from, what you're looking for. Yeah, so you're from the West Coast, you're from Kelowna, with TBC. I didn't know I wanted to do business like right off the bat, more particularly like finance, but it was just kind of a natural. I take easing into things, make you very summer close, highly ranked.
I'm going to skip the employees team, man.
Like kind of, got interested in things, so highly focused at UCM, like Kirkland. So it's cool to see that pretty much come back and see they're getting inbounds from Barclays, and I'm definitely seeing it through and through. I mean, you're with all your contracts, got really deep, use much volume. So when it comes to more so taking a step back, being more client facing, how do you actually structure a transaction properly, get more exposure to that at Barclays. That's a core reason why I moved over, and I'm definitely seeing the true realizations of that, which is awesome to see. Definitely leaner team here, 3 juniors, 1 associate, 2 analysts, 3 directors. Went beyond just, I guess, a simple background. But yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself, kind of, your background done for tips, and then you can relay some questions back.
Very quickly before I forget, the team composition there, was that specific to the mining group?
Yeah.
Okay. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, that seemed a bit small for the whole office. But yeah.
So the employee had like talked about the previous bank he had worked at and the mining group that he was in and the size of it, but didn't mention that like didn't make it obvious. And so the fact that the student picked up on that, right, just from a number was able to tell that okay, that wouldn't be a full office, would like suggest like a pretty good understanding of investment banking and certainly recruitment too, and the different offices. But
so
this is
I'm
teammate.
also from the West. Very much like kind of through all high school. I played a ton of competitive football and really just the entire time loved the kind of team camaraderie and the high intensity nature of the sport. But in my senior year, I had a effectively career-ending injury and kind of like not knowing what I was going to do. It had also been my plan to try and play in university and like keep going down that path, but I kind of had like a void now, not knowing what to do. And at Sauder, I had the opportunity to in one of my classes, I got to kind of listen to a variety of capital markets professionals. And at the time, I was just kind of amazed at the diversity of thought and the sort of breadth of opportunities in the industry. And that's kind of what first captivated me with financial markets. And I decided at the time I was going to give it a shot. And I competed in the Bloomberg Trading Challenge. Not sure if you're super familiar with how much time I found myself spending digging through rabbit holes, whether it be company filings, sell-side reports, just amazed at kind of how far down those rabbit holes, like I said, I can go into trying to invest or assess a single investment opportunity. And I think it's kind of those limitless learning opportunities that has kind of captivated about the financial market since. But in the time between then and now, I've tried to kind of take as many opportunities as I could to put myself in a better position for a job. So whether that be working in internships in finance, a private equity research fund, I'm doing a BD stint at independent advisor here in Vancouver this summer. And then I was a finance major, but at the end of the day, I really love learning. So I'm pursuing a math minor, and I'm doing a longer degree than most of my peers, just because I for one think I'm really only one opportunity to be in university, and I kind of want to make the most of it by pursuing other areas of study and kind of taking the opportunity to take as many classes as I can in my time. So my friends often call me crazy when I'm taking they don't almost is like the tagline at this point is kind of the different opportunities that everyone's had to.
Yeah. So essentially, his teammate was like 3 minutes and 20 seconds long, and that's just like I think maybe he thought that was the case. Like I could do this because they had that such long small talk, basically 6 minutes before this student started his teammate. But like, I would strategically try and use I'd be happy to elaborate on that, right? In things that you do want to show that you know more, but you can't really say it because of that time constraint. But for 3 minutes, that person is just sitting there listening to you, right? And the fact that your teammate is longer than professionals, right, imply to them that you think you are more important than them. But remember, at the end of the day, you ask them for the time, right? So at least showing that you're happy to elaborate, but you're acknowledging the time and respecting it. Hey, I could go on longer in terms of like why I'm interested in investment banking, but just to respect your time, I'd be happy to end there, and I'd love to learn more about your time at, and then go from there, move the conversation forward. So that was the main thing, the goods and bads of that conversation. Now we'll look at one where the intro was pretty poor. This is all SA25, by the way. A chat with Evercore, New York City, an associate, and this is the intro.
Hello?
Hey, what did it say?
Hey, how are you? Good. I'm good. Just finished up an exam this morning, so yeah, I'm glad to be done with that. How are you?
Good. Sorry, good day. Sorry, I'm wildly calling here. What did you say this morning?
I had an exam with economics, so I'm studying economics right now. Yeah. So yeah,
Nice.
glad to be done.
Nice.
Well, firstly, what?
So hopefully it went well, and kind of be done with the intern season because I know recruiting's coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just want to make sure this is a good time to chat since you had a pretty busy day today. So.
Yeah. I can probably do like 15, 20 minutes. So let's take a little time to chat. I think it's the first time today, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just given I'm going to start with the intro.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Questions you have?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently a second year at Western Economics, and I grew up in Hong Kong. Martial arts has been a really big part of my life. I specifically trained Brazilian weight, and through training martial arts for so long, I've lost a ton of bouts. I've learned a ton about hard work, resilience, and seeing challenges as opportunities to learn instead of something get better what I do and continually learn. And throughout these experiences, I've learned so much about finance and so much about looking at different companies and analyzing different businesses. And I know investment banking provides a great place for that. So that's why I'm here talking to you today.
Cool. Thanks for the background. Congrats on the early event.
So essentially, like the point why I'm showing you guys this chat is because just to emphasize when you don't have that small talk, like how it's almost like you just want to get to what you want out of this chat, right? You don't really pay any regards to them. Just like, dude, okay, hop on. Okay, I had a busy day. Fuck it, whatever. Let's just get to the meat of this. Right? So at least like showing that you're able to, and back to the colleague frame, like think about who do you want to work with, right? And just small talk generally, right? As you guys kind of have like started your foray into the professional world, you guys have been to networking events, you understand that the small talk game is a game, right? And it's somewhat, inauthentic, but the fact is you got to play it, right? That's the only way that you get to meet people. And so it goes back to the personality point that we were talking about earlier. And like for your intro, guys, there's no reason why you shouldn't be scripting it for your chats. Now, the common argument, of course, is that like, oh, I'm going to sound robotic. Fair enough. Why don't you just practice saying your teammate out in your own time? So like, think about it like this. If the teammate truly is the most important question, which it is, by the way, because it sets the tone for the rest of the chat, and it's also the lens through which they look at you for the duration of the chat. But if the teammate is the most important question in an interview because it sets the tone for everything else, right? Then most students will practice their TMA 10 times for all of university. If you think about it, any behavioral question is comprised of two things: the delivery of your answer and the content of your answer, right? What are you going to say, and then how are you going to say it? And so, like, if you're not practicing the delivery of your behavioral answers, right, and only coming to chats, and that's the time that you do it, right, I could basically get better at delivering every behavioral answer if I spent an hour today reciting my TMA 20 times. It takes about 3 minutes, right? So instead of like not practicing the delivery of your answers, just literally after this like workshop, just say your TMA out 20 times. Trust me, the difference in your delivery on coffee chats just from that 1 hour you spend will be immense. And think about your behaviorals and the interviews too. So like, one, if you're not going to practice in your own time, have it scripted, right? So that it comes off as polished. Two, if you're scared of sounding robotic because like your like word, like text to speech is just like, you know, you always sound robotic, fair enough. Practice before the chats. So this is another one that we're talking about responding here. And the main thing to think about or to listen to is how Q&A like it sounds. And beyond that, when you have a Q&A, how much it makes you sound like a student, how much it reminds them that you're a student.
Semester, which puts me in a
so
very
he just
weird
finished his TMA and we're coming out of it here. So first mistake, no transition after the TMA.
position in terms of applications and things like that.
Right.
So
Okay.
when you do that, you kind of just come to the person like, here I am. It's like, okay, what do I do with this? Right. So at the end of your team, I'd be like, and so that's why I'm talking to you today. Right now, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. But I'd certainly love to learn more about you and your experiences at boom. And then they'll go into their teammate. As they say their teammate, just take notes. And then you already have the question prepped either from that prepared list or from the one you just crafted. But by not having that, you look unintentional. Like you don't know why you're here. You're just doing coffee chat for the sake of coffee chatting. But remember, the best students will coffee chat people with a goal, with an intention in mind. So make sure you just have that transition. And again, you can script it, right? That's why I had it on my pre-coffee chat setup.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, happy to answer any questions you have about COMOX or finance in general or private equity. I know it's pretty early in your career, but you know, good to have these conversations early. It helps you get thinking about stuff as you progress.
Right, and that's the idea. So I guess my first question is just about your experience at McGill and how
Q&A. It's a Q&A already. It's a Q&A already. My first question. It's like, I don't think anything more needs to be said.
that much.
Well, so I mean, I was at McGill at a very weird time. It was during COVID, so a lot of my program in my year was online. So I wouldn't say I got like the full McGill experience that most people get just because of like what was happening in the world. But I loved the program. I think it was awesome, especially for someone like me who didn't have a finance background. Like it was a really good way to learn kind of everything you needed to learn to get an internship. And it also like, I'm not sure you're familiar with business capital management, and like part of my program in kind of combination with the honors investment management students was to work for a DCM. So that was like a really great experience, a great way to like kind of thrust yourself into the world of finance and investing. And yeah, from the program I ended up like recruiting around Montreal just because that's what I was doing at the time. And I got the internship at Comox in 2021, which was super awesome. And then I got hired back full time. So I've been at Comox for almost years now, full time. And, you know, it's been really cool. There's obviously 3 different asset classes. But now I'm like full time on the private equity.
So if you just talk for 90 seconds, okay? Well, watch the response.
In fact, you mentioned the HIM, and I ended up applying next semester because I'll be in the U2 and I'll have done all of the required courses to apply to the HIM. So I guess the second question, what was working at DCM like in terms
So I'll let him finish the question.
of like the hours and the experience and the kind of work you did? Is that something that is
Okay,
also
so first, like all that she just said for the last 90 seconds, like doesn't even acknowledge it. Just like, I'm doing HM too. Now, fine. If you were going to do that, that's honestly a good start of a response, right? Because you're basically relating your own experiences. I'm going to apply to HIM too. My second question is, it's like, dude, if you're going to apply to HIM and the person who is just in the HIM is talking to you, why don't you ask them about the HIM? And in fact, that allows you to start from university. Sequence your questions so that you end at their current job and then ask the recruitment questions about that job, right? But now it's like, if you don't want to talk about HM, or if you do talk about it later, it's like, you're talking about their firm. It's like, hey, wait, back at McGill, by the way. And then because there's nothing else to talk about at McGill, you go back to the firm. Bro, you just look disorganized. So one, like when you respond, you want to like demonstrate that you understand what they said and then relate to story, something like that, and then transition to the next question or dive deeper into theirs.
to the kind of work you do now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of hours, like, no, just because you got to treat it more like a school course.
Okay. And in terms of like the questions, so if you think about the difference between, and this is on the next slide, but the difference between like asking, oh, you know, how is your transition? versus, I've heard a lot about, transitioning from public to private equities, and something that I've had conversation about. And one of the things I've heard is just the modeling is very different, and the absence of a very efficient market does introduce a different dynamic that most private equity investors aren't used to. And so when you were transitioning, right now, when I was saying that, you guys were like, "Oh shit, he knows. They're thinking that too. So when you don't give context, and when you don't like preempt the question, or like prepare them for what you're going to say, and basically define the bounds, right, within where you want their answer to be, you look like you don't know anything. So keep that in mind as you guys like go into your coffee chats coming up, right? To like basically almost say the answer you expect them to say because of the reasons that you have in your mind, the thought process that you walk through, and then ask them the question, right? So that they know what you know, and then they know what to focus on too. So that was bad responsive. So I know we're already at the 45-minute mark. I do want to show you guys and all these recordings we uploaded to the drive that, for the people who stay to the end will be added to. So you guys can listen to them in your own time. But I think the main one to listen to, I think, for this one, like in terms of you guys, the extent of my feedback would be the A&D one with Lazard. So this is a chat with Lazard A&D, LA. So there are definitely a lot of improvements to be made here, and I have many suggestions on these slides. But yeah, all the recordings will be there. This is just some stuff on what you can do intra chat, so during the chat, right, to almost come off like you know more than you actually do. Because Andy is pretty niche, right? So now I'll go over these do's and don'ts if you guys want me to, but I think these are the main ones to pay attention to. And yeah, so kind of like that's okay, cool. All right, all that stuff is there. And I'm just wondering how you can find that line between quality and quantity recurring chats. Sure. So I'd say like the only reason why you should be doing chats, right, is to increase the quality of the chats that you actually care about having high quality for. As in, right, like you either have to, like, it depends on when you start. So if you had 4 months until an application, or 4 months until a posting dropped, right? Like you would basically be emailing maybe one person a week, and hopefully organically going from one person to the next, i.e. you get the referral to a person, right? And that's how you penetrate a firm. Versus like sending 5 emails in 1 week, right? To have hopefully schedule as many as you can because you're a week from the deadline. Now, that's assuming that these chats you're having are for people that you actually care about having a good chat with. Okay. Now, remember, the first time you have a chat with them is their impression of you. So there is some element of wanting to optimize for that first impression, meaning like to maximize, and what I said here, like in terms of the what to have down in pre-coffee chat activities, like coffee chatting ability, you should try to have that as good as possible. So if you have enough time, right, like you should try and just be doing practice coffee chats with like Big Four accountants, let's say, right, or like wealth management, if that it doesn't falls outside of like your desired roles, to just get better at coffee chatting, right? Now you can still do the actual like referral ones that you care about on the back end, right? But in terms of quality or quantity, you always want to have the highest quality chats, right? And that comes down to your point in time coffee chatting ability. So doing more chats is really just to either increase your penetration in a firm, right? But if you're not at the threshold required to get referrals, then you should be doing more chats to get better at coffee chatting so that you can reach that threshold. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's do the evaluative coffee chat. Just go over to it. Actually, let's do the Lazard one instead. I'll upload the RBC one.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person you're trying to reach is not available. At the tone, please record your message.
Okay, so we'll go to his team name.
It's awesome, yeah. Yeah, so just to give some more context on my upbringing, yeah, I started playing the violin very young age. I started seeing like results on all the competitions and turned competitive at age 11. My parents just found me like a new coach. She was like extremely strict. Started training for hours on end. It just taught me a lot about like attention to detail, like perseverance, discipline, and I was eventually able to like use these lessons looking back and to eventually make it to the all national team picture in my sophomore year of high school. And then fast forward to my junior year, I have like a little bit of relevant experience with just the aerospace industry. I did master's research in summer program during my junior summer, so it's also why I reached out. And then yeah, just to fast forward 2 more years to coming into the work environment, I just tried to get as in the like community as I could, attend all the club fairs, and I was just interacting with as many club execs as I could, just to sort of get a better idea of where I could be. And I was lucky enough to ultimately talk to seniors who had just finished their IB internship. So what they told me just about like the overall environment in banking, like the high pressure, the competitive nature. In a sense, it was sort of like remind me of my own experience in violin, and I sort of knew that like those environments were like the most like where I learned the most from, I guess. And being able to combine that interest with I guess tech and aerospace is something that I didn't think I'd be able to do in business, but now it's something it seems like I could potentially do in the future, and that's why I just wanted to reach out, hear about the work you do at Lazard LA, just get some advice and just learn about your own experience in I guess breaking into IB. So yeah.
So if you guys picked up on it, the teammate adjustment came down to when he added in the A&D thing.
Just give a brief intro of myself as well. Just thanks again for taking the time to call me. My name is Bowen. I'm currently a sophomore at Penn. I'm studying computer science with a minor in stats at Wharton. Originally based in the Philly suburbs, you can imagine, a big Philly sports fan. I went to Lower Marion High School. And yeah, yeah, Kobe. It's awesome, you know, yeah. Yeah, so just to give some context on my upbringing, yeah, I started playing violin at a very young age. I started seeing like results playing all the like competitions and turned competitive at age 11. My parents just found me like a new coach. She was like extremely strict. Started training for hours on end daily. It just taught me a lot about like attention to detail, like perseverance, discipline, and I was eventually able to like use summer. So it's also why fast forward to my junior year, I have like a little bit of relevant experience with just the aerospace industry. I did some master's research in the summer program during my junior summer. So it's also why I reached out. And then yeah, just to fast forward 2 more years to
So that would be the thing where I would introduce it and like cap it with things, and which I'd be happy to elaborate on, and then go back, right? Because like it piques his interest in his head. You don't take up too much time, and it serves as like why I'm reaching out to you, right? The intentionality. So we'll get into the actual question now. So he ends his teammate, other guy goes, cool.
About our group. Just take this kind of conversation. We don't have much time. Kind of wherever you want to go. And I guess like right before that, you're a sophomore.
yeah, current sophomore, yeah.
So our recruiting timeline is coming up. I think we're going to do first rounds next week.
Okay.
Week after is the latest. I know it's probably a question that you had, but just put that out there.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
I guess could you sort of just walk through sort of what like the day to day looks like? Just going to being a first year analyst.
Okay. Terrible, right? Like he's also not going to provide context.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
like guys, if you're still asking about what the day to day is like, right, for an IB analyst, and this wasn't what he was asking, right? Like obviously he knows what he does. He's talking about A&D, he's talking about Lazard, right? But he didn't say that here. And if you're still asking it when you're like trying to have referral quality copy chats, like you're not going to get referrals. You're still asking what's the day to day like. Like you should know, right? So in terms of, okay, if you still wanted to ask it, how do I make it something that is askable, that won't detract from my community, and in fact will improve it, right? Basically what I said before, which is tell them the answer that you expect, right? But then ask them for their opinion, right? So you're introducing a story. You're telling them like the research that you've done, right? So that's really it. Like it's not hard to improve your questions, but you do need to pay a lot of attention to it. And it will be internally like quite painful when you like try to transition. You're like, oh, what do I say? I'm like, oh, right? But it's a skill. So we'll continue the chat.
I'll say this. I'll say for our day to day,
Yeah.
because we're LA based, I think generally our days start earlier than the East Coast and end a little bit earlier than usually around 8:30 time frame. Whereas New York, it's probably around 10 a.m.
Gotcha.
And look, I think, and so the day really just depends on kind of the work stream that we have going. It can be very different. Like yesterday, we were focused on the model for one of the sell sides that we're doing.
Gotcha. I was just curious, like with companies sort of just like coming from all over the place, like.
This is a good question.
Yeah, the days vary, but it's either PowerPoint or Excel or just research.
Right.
Generally, but yeah.
Gotcha. Just to follow up on that, like sort of with your own like experience, sort of more on the I guess technical side. I was just curious, like with companies sort of just like coming from all over the place, like specifically because it's for the aerospace industry, it's like I guess like inherently global. So I was wondering, like with your own like M&A deals, like are you seeing an increase in like cross-border like M&A activity, or like if so, like I guess what challenges these deals like entail?
I think that's a good question. Like fair enough, right? He knows a bit about A&D. Going back to the point, right? And that's what he does, right? And it comes off like as you guys were listening to it, like he knows stuff about A&D, right? So that's why you want to like preface almost your questions, and that's what having a conversation is. Because a conversation at the end of the day, right, is simply just a representation, a proportion of a basically speaking between two people, right? Like a Q&A is still can be between two people, but it's just disproportionate distribution of time spent talking, as in the speaker is 90. The person asking is 10. Conversation is defined by them being very equivalent. right? So think about like, how do I make it a conversation, right? It's really just like add in enough words to like get your proportion of talking up to like 40%, and then you're good, right? But the problem is like, what do I say that doesn't make me look stupid, right? What do I say that actually makes me look smart and improves, right? Because we all have those friends that like just talk and talk and talk, and it's like just vacuous stuff, right? And it's like, bro, can you like stop philosophizing and just give me an answer, right? The guy's like always overthink stuff, and you're like, bro, like, why are you always doing that, right? Same thing for them. Now, in terms of how I'd improve it, right? This is what I would say instead. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate all the clarity. You know what you said about your data ending earlier. Is that still the case with how the A&D market's trending? Right. I think we've got the Russia-Ukraine war, increased demand for air travel, with the pent-up demand released from the COVID, restrictions, and of course rising tension between the U.S. and China. I'd imagine that makes for a pretty busy job. But something that I've never seen is seasonality in A&D. And with that in mind, is there like what is the state of cross-border activity in A&D given how global it is? Boom, you sound like you know so much. But guess what? All I did, guys, was go online, search up A&D market driver, choose 2 of the first 4 things, right? Literally just look, this is the first page of the PwC report at the top. Bang, pre-pandemic levels. And by the way, like he's talking for about 90 seconds. So as soon as he mentions like A&D and the M&A activity, blah, blah, like I'm already searching. That was the second link. This is the first page, right? 2 things, rising demand, right, for military capabilities, right, cybersecurity threats. It's like you can make questions on the fly, guys, and this is how you sound like you know a lot more than you do, right? But the fact is that you need to get so good at coffee chatting that you're comfortable with leaving the conversation and going on Google, right? Guys, your 10th coffee chat, it's impossible to do this. Why? You're not good enough at it yet. You're still anxious. So remember that, like, and this is what I meant by increasing like returns. Like as you get better at it, you can start adding in all these different tactics, right? But you got to learn the rules of the game. So don't take your 10th coffee chat as an indication of what this networking is like. The difference between your 10th and 75th coffee chat is night and day, right? But you guys have to get there first. So.
Yeah, great question. I think, our group, I think one thing about Lazard is we'll introduce all of the research
Yeah.
firm. We're pretty global.
I'll show you
We're
guys.
bigger in Europe than we are in the States, or we probably the same amount, but we have a very strong presence in Europe.
Gotcha.
And so I would say a lot of our deals are cross-border. In our office right now, I can name 4 deals. 2 of them we're working on with our London teams, like hand in hand. One of them we're working on with Italy, and one of them with France. So very cross-border what we do, for sure. I think, an added bonus to that is, even if it is, I guess, if it is cross-border, like we obviously collaborate with London, Paris, etc. But the execution is run out of our office. We're not just a regional office that does like kind of boots on the ground support. Like we will run the model, we will run the process, we do the presentation. Right. Like we will do all that from end to end, which is really great. You don't always find that in offices. So
really quickly, guys. So phrase like boots on the ground, right? Or I think you said like pop the bottle or something like that. When you hear that stuff and like it clicks for you, but you hadn't heard the phrase before, note that stuff down and use it in your next chat, because that's how you gradually sound more and more like a banker.
One of the deals that's with the London firm I'm working on, and we're completely running everything. They're just kind of there for support. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for that. I guess also, like with your own experience, I was just curious, like how, like.
So the mistake there, got it. Thanks for that. You just spent like 2 minutes talking, dude. Right? You do want to at least give some level of acknowledgement, some level. I will say you don't want, because if you did it for every question, right, the proportion would be a bit too courageous on your end. Oh, dude, he wants to talk 50% of the time, right? So let's be conservative, 40%, but still, like, you do want to add that understanding, that synthesis. So he's going to ask this question, and this is how I would have.
What like types of deal structures are like most common with like the aerospace and defense sector?
I think
So like, there's no relation to what, or he doesn't explicitly say it. Remember, the dude was just explaining like how Lazard, right, does A&D and all that. And so the question makes sense, right? In this student's mind, he's going through the thought process to understand, okay, based on all this stuff, what are M&A, like, what are A&D deal structures like? But when you don't say that, it makes it look like you don't know. So I would always try and add that in before you ask the question. I almost repeat back to them what they said. But you see here, I ask the question and then I almost say, right, what I think my answer might be. Anyways, guys, I know we're up on time here and I do have to hop too. So let me just look at the chat one more time and see if there's any questions. Perfect coffee chat. No, I think because like, it's almost because sometimes you don't even know which copy chats led to the referrals, right? Like I talked to 8 people from Molos LA. I got the first round interview. I don't know who was the one that helped, right? So like unless you record all of them and then I don't know, like go back but the fact is that because you're not going to be able to determine whether or not it's perfect right after the chat or really ever, I think just focus on bringing your best to every chat, like on doing the prep, on saying your behavioral answer, all that stuff, and you'll eventually get your referrals. But yeah, guys, thank you everyone for coming. And I hope this is helpful. Do send that stuff kind of like to that email just so I can add all of you to the drive. But other than that, have a good weekend, guys, and I appreciate all of you coming. Have a good rest of your summer. See ya.